All right. Hi, I'm Linda Deir back on Saturdays with you guys. Okay. And I'm going to just talk about what we did last Saturday for a minute. I read to you from chapter 26 of my true life story, Guided. Her spirit guide angels were her best friends and life coaches. I read about a lifetime of family secrets unravels. We really enjoyed our 3-day visit with Uncle Charlie. With what I had learned from Uncle Charlie, I now had more questions than answers about my family history. Ray and I talked about the fact that we thought we should investigate all this once we got back to Sedona. However, upon our return, we get a phone call from Cindy. Cindy told us that mom was diagnosed with lung cancer and had about 6 months to live. Knowing that my mom had a short time to live, I went right to work on investigating my family history. It was no longer a should do situation. It was now a have to do urgent matter. I just didn't know how revealing it would all become. Today, I will be reading to you from chapter 27 of Guided. Clarity brings one epiphany after another. And Guided is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook format, and I read the book myself. In fact, the audiobook's the best-selling version of Guided. All right, chapter 27. Now, we have a total of 28 chapters in Guided, so we're nearing the end of part 4. Clarity brings one epiphany after another. We got home from the Pennsylvania trip the end of September. Boy, was I grateful that my parents had taken the initiative to leave that place. My relatives were steeped in religion and tradition. They wanted us to come for their 4th of July family reunions, but other than a mutual respect, we had nothing in common with them. Over the years, they stopped communicating with us. The trip had been about healing and not reunions. Most of them found healing and peace because they wanted to. Others, including my mom, chose not to. After the trip, I was flooded with one epiphany after another. If I were to sum up my mother's life, it would be that her anger and resentments caused her to miss out on much of what was available to her. As a child, she was confined in a religious cloister of simple-minded people who thrived on their judgments. My mom hated it there. Her problem was that even though she left, she took it all personally, and that's what ruined her life. That's one of the first things my guides helped me understand, to never take any of it personally. Now I can see from my mother's choices what it can do to a person when they don't know this. My dad has had his own reasons to run. He always referred to religion as hypocritical. My dad's mother tried to force him to become a priest to bring respect to the family. My dad opted out of that, left his wife, ran off with a pregnant minor to start over in California. Although my mom and dad did some wild things, it took that rebel spirit they shared to break out of those stifling environments. They built a new life 3,000 miles away and did their best to run from their past. What they did is out there, even by today's standards, but they did it anyway. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for taking that bold step. I think Mom's early teenage years of freedom and easy money, well, as easy as being a prostitute could be, were probably the best years of her life. She had her freedom and control over her life in spite of her line of work. She definitely didn't want kids Having control and freedom, having the control and freedom that money provided for that short time in her early teens may have largely influenced what set the stage for the negative attitude she had for the rest of her life. Dad was always worried about mom leaving him, which I never understood as a kid, but can surely understand now. He may have been worried about what she would do, like going back to hooking, that gave her that money and freedom and control that she treasured. Excuse me, and control that she treasured. It didn't require any skills. She had the experience. She was 13 years younger than my dad, and they weren't even married. I wonder if the reason my dad didn't stop my mom's abusive behavior was that she was holding the abandonment of his first wife, Anne, over his head. Adding to that is the fact that he also ran off with a minor over state lines. I suspect that was more a probability than a possibility. I knew my mom's time was short, and I knew the truth, which I was sure my half-brother Randy did not. Mom always made it clear that Randy would be her only heir when she passed. This was just the continuation of the ongoing overprotection she extended to him. At this time in his life, Randy was facing some serious challenges. He had a dying mother in California with whom he spent part of his time, and a dying wife in Oregon with whom he spent the rest of his time. After a few days after I returned from Pennsylvania, I called Randy. I told him I had information for him, something I think he would want to know. I told him it was about mom, and it was something I thought he should know in case he wanted to ask mom about it before she died. He knew about Uncle Bob's visit because he was there when Uncle Bob came to visit mom. Randy told me to go ahead and tell him what I knew because nothing would surprise him anymore. He was half hearing me when I told him that mom was 6 months pregnant with him when she met my dad. I didn't say anything else because the rest was easy to figure out for himself. That was my only obligation to Randy, and it was his choice to act on it or not. Sometime later, I called Randy's home, and his wife, Linda, answered. She said Randy was in California with mom. Then she proceeded to confide in me, telling me that she really resented Randy for choosing his mother over her throughout their marriage. She said she never should have allowed that, and that she would have done things differently, knowing what she knows now. She felt cheated and said she should have made better decisions in her life, and one of them would have been to leave Randy years ago. She said she would do better next time. Linda was lucid and clearer than I had ever heard her before. She was also mad, but she was in her power and really standing up for herself. She truly confided in me and let it all out. She died 2 months after mom died. Mom called me about a week before she died. She was right back to gossiping and small talk. I asked her if she realized she was dying, and she said yes. She went on to tell me how mad she was at Cindy, making sure that I knew that Cindy conned her out of more than $46,000. She said she gave her the money because she thought she bought the cancer story and felt sorry for her. Ironically, it turned out that mom got cancer and not Cindy. The two collaborated against me for over 20 years, with mom programming Cindy to take me for all she could financially. Together, they poisoned my granddaughter's mind so badly against me that there was no possibility of a relationship with her. I had to just shake my head at the irony that it was mom and not me who finally got conned by Cindy. But I never mentioned that to her because there was no point. I just let her ramble on like I always did because I believe that even the nastiest person can get it right in their final moments. My mom wasn't one of them. She couldn't be reached. That's what my guides always told me. They always told me, help the ones who can be reached and leave the rest alone. That's what I did. A few days later, my mom had a stroke and died the following day. Randy was with her, which was appropriate. I had no reason or desire to be there. Randy tried to get me to come by telling me to bury the hatchet. I told him I never had the hatchet and that she took it with her. He didn't understand because he was never on the receiving end of all the awful things that mom had done to Larry and me. Larry's paternity was the sinful secret she intended to take to her grave. But just a few months before she died, it was all revealed as she was confronted by those who she had hurt the most. Randy never saw the cruel person she really was, simply because he chose not to. He needed to believe that she was a saint, which is what he called her when she died. She was a saint to him because she always protected him. She was her lifelong lie, and that was what she was really protecting by protecting him. Mom's shame and lie served as their bond in life and into death. After mom died, I called Cindy and confronted her with everything I had discovered over the past several months. True to form, she saw things from her own delusional perspective and justification. This has been the story of her life. Cindy is caught up in believing her own lies because she can't face reality. Just like the rest of my family, none of them could do that. In that conversation, she told me that mom gave her the money because she wanted to. I reminded Cindy that mom wanted to only because she conned her into believing she had cancer, just like Cindy had tried to pull the same con on us just less than a year earlier. I told Cindy that after years of ripping me off, lying, manipulating, turning my granddaughter against me, and consistently colluding with mom against me, I was done with her. It was the end once and for all. It had taken me a long time to finally give up on her. I told her that when she was 37 years old. Randy called to tell me there would be no funeral or memorial, and he would just have her cremated. Kind of cold, huh? I asked him if he had spoken to mom about what I told him. He said he had not. Then, to my surprise, he referred to some health problem he was having as something he inherited from my dad. Did he not hear what I told him, that dad was not his father? Come on, pages. That mom had been 6 months pregnant with him when she first met my dad. I was so frustrated that I couldn't speak to him anymore. He never could deal with reality. There it is again. I had a whole family that can't deal with reality. Thanks to the way my mom had fawned over Randy, often at my and Larry's expense, and Randy's own superior attitude toward us, I never had much of a relationship with him anyway. As far as I was concerned, our karma was completed long ago. However, he did call me one last time complaining about Cindy ripping mom off. He wanted to get that money back from her. I told him that that was his business. I told him that although I didn't agree with what Cindy did, from a higher perspective, I thought mom had it coming. She had encouraged Cindy to work against me, and one way of looking at it is that mom had finally gotten back which she had promoted. Tip: although you choose that family you came into to learn some of your most valuable lessons, being stuck with them doesn't have to last your entire lifetime. If you are aware and if you listen to your guides, you can learn what you need to. This gives you the freedom to move on with the rest of your life because you did indeed overcome what you came here to learn from them. Meanwhile, in a channeling session that Ray and I had, December 22nd, 2006, Ray's guides came through with this message for him. Very soon, feel too bad for mom. Betty will die. Ray, good son. Until now, she understood nothing, and that was because she had Alzheimer's. At last, she will be at peace. Can't see, so feels you there, Ray. She was blind now. This winter will be too cold for her. Will be too cold for her to bear. Wrong way to interpret who you are. They're referring to Ray's relatives and how they judged him for the decisions he made regarding Betty's care. Relatives, brother has to find out for himself what you already know, Ray, not in this lifetime. In January 2007, Ray had a dream where he was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking out into the bright light. And to find out where this really started, if you refer back to chapter 25, which is 2 chapters ago, in a channeling session we had on July 12, 2006, you'll see the prediction of this event that I'm about to talk about. From behind him, on the right side, his mom came walking up out of the haze with her suitcase. Then, behind him, on his left side, came his Aunt Jean, who had died in 2003, with her suitcase, telling Ray she was there to take his mom to paradise. That was the way they used to talk about the Hawaii trip that Ray sent them both on in 1974. The meaning was pretty clear. 1 month after Ray's dream, we got a call from the Alzheimer's home where his mom lived. They said that she had gotten the flu and was not getting better. She was in the hospital with pneumonia. This was in line with what Ray's guides had told us in December in a channeling session. From Arizona, Ray was in contact with the doctors and nurses while the local relatives started going to her bedside in the hospital. These relatives were unhappy that Ray wasn't there, and apparently there was a lot of judgment about that. However, the doctors and nurses told Ray that there was no reason for him to be there when she could hold on for weeks and perhaps even get better. But as the days went by, she didn't get better. So the doctors asked Ray about her medical directives. Being her medical power of attorney, Ray told them she did not want procedures done to keep her alive. The relatives who pined daily by her bedside prevented her from leaving peacefully were the same relatives who had criticized Ray for the decisions he made regarding his mother's care, despite the fact that Ray had found her the most progressive Alzheimer's facility in the country at that time. One morning, just before dawn, we got a call from the nurse telling Ray that his mother was lucid and wanted to talk to him. One of the first things she said was that her sister, Jean, who had died 4 years earlier, had come to see her to bring her home to paradise. Ray told her that it was okay for her to go now and that he knew Aunt Jean was waiting for her. This is really cool. Ray told her, okay. Okay. Ray told her he loved her and to close her eyes and go to sleep. In that moment, she did exactly that and never woke up. She died peacefully. This is exactly how and when Ray's guide said she would pass. When winter is too cold to bear, she won't recover from being sick, and she will pass peacefully. It's interesting that Ray's mom and my mom died within 2 months of each other. My mom was 75 years old, and Ray's mom was 85. Ray and I are indeed kindred spirits. We flew to Ohio to deal with Betty's funeral. Ray had arranged things years earlier, so it went off smoothly. We stayed with Ray's high school friend, Joe, and his wife, Diane, in their big Victorian house in Toledo. We had a lot to talk about because they were very interested in spiritual stuff. They especially loved the channeling sessions we did for them on our talking board while we were there. In one of the sessions, Joe's guides answered questions about his health. They told him to get his head examined. Joe laughed, thinking it was a joke. But by 2010, just 3 years later, they would both recall that session when Joe did actually have his head examined, which revealed the source of his health problems, a pituitary tumor. They were blown away. Diane's guides came through and told Diane about her teeth in detail. She hadn't asked about it, and we didn't know anything was ongoing with dental challenges for her. She was really amazed at the accurate information her guides brought through to her. The first time Joe and Diane experienced a channeling session with us was December 2004, when they attended our wedding. Our sessions were still in their infancy and crude compared to what they had become. Joe and Diane were really amazed at the speed and accuracy of our sessions now, especially Joe. After we returned home, Ray's mother came through during one of our channeling sessions to tell us, I have my mind back and feel good again. I'm in paradise now, and I don't want to come back. We asked her if she had any regrets, and she said, the only one is that I was a burden. She believed that she had been a burden to Ray after his father died, and then later when she came down with Alzheimer's. Now that we were home from the funeral, I decided to stop putting energy into my real estate business. With all the information we had been getting from our trusted advisors in our channeling sessions, we knew that real estate was once again headed for a serious crash. Now, keep in mind, this was 2007. Okay, just 1 year later, we know what happened. It had been, I had been designing homes for clients for the past few years, but had not been real active in sales. I just couldn't do it knowing what I knew. For me, it was morally wrong to put people in situations I knew that would be financially devastating for them. This decision really hurt us financially. I could have done it and no one would have known, but I would have been a hypocrite. Thankfully, Ray supported me in my decision. I started dedicating all my energy to the channeled readings website and its monthly CR news reports. This is where we could really make a difference in helping people avoid pending disasters and setbacks in their personal and financial lives that we continue to do to this day. I had been doing these readings for people since 1989, and with Ray since 2007. Ray and I had become very fluid together on the talking board, by far the best channeling partner I have ever had. Unfortunately, many people didn't want to know what was coming because they didn't want anything to change. This surprised us because we found that knowing what was ahead allowed us to prepare for it. We had an analogy for what we were doing. If you're sitting on the railroad tracks and a train is coming, we let you know when it will arrive so you can move off the railroad tracks. In the case of real estate, one of the hazards for real estate agents is that they are vulnerable to lawsuits. It doesn't matter whether they follow the rules or not. They stand to lose money, time, and their reputation. You only occasionally hear about these lawsuits, but they are just one of the hidden facts of life that are revealed in our monthly CR news reports, the news before it happens. By the way, we don't do those anymore. We stopped doing those for the exact reason I said. People didn't want to hear it, all right? But we do provide that information, that covert information, in our coaching sessions, our private coaching sessions, and our webinars that are private. Ray continued to work in his executive recruiting business, but that had deteriorated by early 2008. With no money coming in from our former businesses, Ray started selling off our personal assets at weekend garage sales. Next, we put our townhouse up for sale, but the commercial neighbor had recently started an enterprise that created loud noises early in the morning, which completely destroyed our property value. We found ourselves jolted awake each day at 3 a.m. with noise that lasted until 5 a.m. every morning. We attempted to take legal action, but municipal garbage service was exempt from the Sedona City noise ordinances, no matter what time they chose to pick up. So we lost our case. It was pretty apparent that no one in their right mind was going to want to buy our home with that noise issue, which would have only led to future lawsuits if we did try to sell it. So not only was our livelihood gone, but our real estate was worthless. However, our channeled readings business was building, but the investment in setting it up exceeded our income at that time. Just when things looked like they couldn't get any worse, warnings started coming through our CR News reports that we published 14 times a month, telling our readers an economic crash was on the horizon. Sure enough, later that year, September 2008, the Great Recession hit full force. This crash of 2008-2009 was something we had been warned about and preparing for since 2007. But even with the warning, it didn't mean it was going to be easy. We continued to sell our assets and build the Channeled Readings Project and its CR News reports. After the crash happened, our clients who heeded the predictions and had taken appropriate action saw their assets soar in value. Those who did nothing were devastated and even embarrassed when we would occasionally see them in town. Some of these people were even mad at us. That's what denial looks like. Blame someone else when you can't face the real source of the problem, themselves. Awareness. Change is difficult, but not changing is just postponing the inevitable. The reason you don't change is because the reason people don't change is because they are fearful and lack support. There's no reason to fear anything when you have the support of your guides. They never backstab, lie, manipulate, defraud, misguide, use love as a weapon, or have any personal agenda. They are the real thing. When you work with your guides, you are not giving something up, although it may seem that way. You are getting much more than you ever had. You'll see it once you move through it, but you need to follow the guidance. Then, in the afternoon of October 31st, 2008, we got a call from Uncle Charlie's sister-in-law telling us that he had died. She said he passed peacefully. He was 93 years old. I was so grateful that a couple of years earlier, he had unintentionally set a powerful healing into motion throughout the entire family. I love him, and I was very glad that Ray got to meet him. All right. So you guys, next Saturday, Ray, it's our webinar. OMG. We're going to be promoting it. We're going to be letting you guys know about putting it out on the social media feed about that probably the early part of the week. All right, just a couple of days from now. So look for it. That'll be November 28th at 1 p.m. Pacific time, right here on my Facebook page. No, this is a private webinar. It's a paid webinar. And it's for your eyes only, for those who purchase it, okay? Because like I said earlier, the information that comes through is not something that's palatable for everybody. And you've got to be able to connect with it, all right? All right, so 2 Saturdays from now, December 5th at 1 p.m. Pacific time, I will read to you from chapter 28 of Guided. By the way, chapter 28 is the last chapter in Guided. After that, we'll have another surprise for you, all right? All right, so that'll be 3 weeks from now by the time we move on from all this. Gratitude for our past and a guided future. After the crash of 2008, our CR News Report's predictions had been validated and were getting a lot more attention. Not necessarily the best attention. That's another reason we don't do them anymore. That single event affected everyone, and no one could pretend that things were going to be okay any longer. Unemployment was out of control. Financial institutions were melting down. The auto industry was collapsing. The world governments were under great pressure to meet their obligations, and real estate collapsed, and the cost of most essentials skyrocketed. Everything our personal readings and the CR News reports had been preparing our clients for was happening. And by the way, that's what our webinars cover. They cover things like this, but we don't publish them publicly anymore. You have to sign up for it. $29 to get them. Okay. So until then, remember, you have help. You are never alone and always being guided.